Greetings, I'm Damali Robertson. I am a student of life. I am a filmmaker. I am a lifelong learner. I am always in the practice of cultural humility and sacred activism. I'm learning to be an organizer. I am learning that I am actually an artist. I'm a poet and a writer. I'm a speaker, and I feel called in my life to stand for our collective liberation and our shared humanity. And this podcast is the latest in a series of body of work that I'm putting out in the world. I'm working on a book, which I'll keep you updated about. I'm working on a film, which I'll keep you updated about. I have other podcasts in the world. I did a podcast series with my daughter, Generational Banter. I created Souls of Women Media many years ago, which is now Freedom Narrative Films. And Freedom Narrative Films is the vehicle, the vessel in which I bring these podcasts to you and the upcoming film that I'm talking about. So I wanted to give you a little background about me. There's so much on my website about my spiritual path and all the work that I've been doing. I will say to you that I am a faith-based person. I'm a spiritual being having a very human experience. And because of that, I feel the constant tap on the shoulder from the universe. The universe is saying, Damali, get busy doing the work that I put you here to do. And that is one of those things, I should say. It's about how do we really embrace our shared humanity. Too many messages in the world tell us that some people are more human than others, that some groups of people deserve to be treated humanely and some groups don't. And we begin that from a race-based place. And there's a whole history that's not what this podcast is about, right? We'll talk about history somewhere else, but there's a whole history that brought us to this place, and especially deciding that the Black body was the least human and the white body was the most supreme. And so on this podcast, we take that out of the equation fully. Because what we're announcing here together is that everybody, every single body on this planet is fully human and deserving to live into their highest expression, to be a light and to bring about their fullest potential. And dehumanizing systems like oppression, white body supremacy won't get us there. And actually, all the trauma most of us have endured over and over and over, whether it be the very universal trauma that happens in each of our lives, regardless of race and other identities, whether it be racialized trauma that happens very specifically in countries like the United States, in European countries, in countries where white body supremacy is so alive, but also in the countries like the place where I'm from, where my ancestors were brought when they were brought from the African continent to Jamaica. There is something so alive there of colorism, where the lighter you are, the better you are. That's the perception. The darker you are, the lesser you are. And that's a leave-over from the European kind of ideas that we've inherited about whiteness being the standard. And we see it even in a country, even in majority Black countries, you see that, and you see the way it's connected to so many other things. So we're here to push that aside as well, to say no. There is no hierarchy based on color. If we're gonna love on each other, this podcast, Letters to Humanity, if we're gonna increase the love as human beings, we're gonna have to put those things aside. And we're gonna have to understand that even in the context where we associate things like Blackness with less intelligence, with less prosperity, with less access, and we create systems that perpetuate that, even in countries that are are majority Black, right? We see it. We see it in the way that folks are criminalized. The darker skin is often the first criminalized, even in a country that is majority Black. And so what we're doing is we're pushing all those things aside and we're saying no. That we have to understand how we got here. And then there's the intergenerational trauma, right? From the folks like the enslaved Africans who were brought across the New World to the United States, where I sit right now, across the Caribbean, Latin America, right? These love letters to humanity are acknowledging that there are groups who have experienced such intergenerational trauma. It still lives in their bodies, even if they haven't experienced it themselves firsthand. If your ancestors survived the slave trade, if your ancestors experienced the Holocaust, if your ancestors were Native American indigenous people who experienced genocide, right, were stripped from their land and were forced to assimilate to ways of being that weren't theirs, there's intergenerational trauma there. If your ancestors were enslaved or experienced something like Jim Crow, there's trauma there. Intergenerational trauma that may show up. It doesn't always, but it may. And I could go on and on and on. And you know, the thing that I want to say in this series, as I think about what's important to think about when we're talking about our humanity, the love letters to humanity, is to my neighbors in white bodies. You have not escaped dehumanization. You have not escaped dehumanization. You have not escaped the trauma living in your body from a history of domination and imperialism and superiority, right? You have not escaped the impact. When your heart has hardened to the degree that I know it has for so many of you, you have not escaped the impact of this. And it doesn't matter where you're situated. If you're in a European country, if you're in the United States of America, given the climate that we see right now, right here, if you are somewhere else in the world, if you have been at the effect, if you and your ancestors, as participants in the stripping of indigenous land, you know, you told yourselves a story that you're discovering a new world, but you couldn't have been because there were people there. There's an impact to you. When you and your ancestors decided that it was okay to bring people over, human beings from the African continent, to do work for you, to create your wealth, there's something that followed. There's a pain that followed that. There's a trauma in the body that followed that. And so now your hearts have hardened to the degree that you think reclaiming a legacy of supremacy, especially in the United States right now, but across the world we see it. If you think that you have escaped the dehumanization that supremacy brings, you are mistaken. And that's what this podcast is about. It's a love letter. It's a reclaiming your humanity, white-bodied people, right? And a lot of my conversation, and it's going to be a solo conversation, right? I'm going to be right here just talking into the mic. A lot of these conversations will be taken from books and thought leaders and people who know so much, like Resmaa Menakem. And I can't tell you how much I value Resmaa Menakem's work, my grandmother's hands, because he lays it out that Black bodies like mine, and I'm the lighter hued Black body, so I understand that comes with a whole different set of dynamics in this world than a darker hued Black body. But Black bodies like mine, bodies of culture, which are the bodies of color. And I think what I love about him saying bodies of culture is that he's trying to take us away from this. We are just the color. We bring culture into this world, right? And we know that. Black, brown, indigenous people, people from across the Asian continent, the African continent, right? Latin America. We bring so much to these United States, but are all around the world. So I just want to announce that I love the term bodies of culture because it reminds us all that we offer to the world, right? Not just the categories we get placed in. So we're going to refer to Resmaa Menakem's book. We're also going to refer to other books. I am reading a book right now. I'm reading several books. I'm always reading books. I'm going to tell you that. I'm always reading books. And I'm reading a book right now. Let me tell you, I'm going to keep my stuff right here so I can tell y'all the books I'm reading. I'm going to keep myself some notes. But what I wanted you to know is that I'm reading many books, okay? That's what I wanted you to know. And I wanted you to also know that one of the books that I'm reading is by, and I'm going to pull it, I'm determined. I'm determined to pull it up because I said, listen, Damali, you're going to be prepared to look at notes and to do things. So I have my handy dandy iPad in front of me. Natalie Gutierrez's book, The Pain We Carry. I am reading that book as well. And then Prentice Hemphill has a book, right, about healing that we're going to refer to. There's so many books. There's so many people out here saying the thing that we need to hear to increase our humanity. This love letter to humanity, this is what we're going to be talking about. And so I want to say, because I'm just trying to tell you what this is about so you'll tune in, right? We're always going to do a somatic practice. That's that body practice. Because what I've learned, I was having some, I'm going to disclose, I'm going to tell y'all the truth here. I was really activated recently. I was having a trauma response, or several trauma responses. I had led a workshop on trauma, on racial trauma, on vicarious trauma, and intergenerational trauma. And that reminds me, I want to come back to say something about vicarious trauma. But I was leading this workshop and I left it just shaking. My nervous system was just like this. Because in the workshop, and I'm just doing this on purpose so you can get the sense of the vibration. Because in the workshop, I remembered I'm there talking to all these workers, to these people, who are at work in these places where they feel dehumanized. And I remembered in my body how it felt every time I was dehumanized in a workplace. And part of the reason why I want to write and read and talk about letters to humanity is because we don't have to be this way. But the problem is that so many people carry trauma in their bodies and they just keep like spewing it out on other people, right? So your manager, sometimes when they're showing up in that dehumanizing way, it's because they have their own unprocessed trauma, right? And so it's like, where are the tools? And they can be spiritual tools, they can be material tools. But what I'm saying is, where are the tools that we carry with ourselves to take care of ourselves? Because our bodies are reacting. And I learned something when I was going through the grief of my dad's passing, is that I can tell myself anything I want. I can be like, oh, I'm good. Oh, I'm good. And there's a place for us to affirm things for ourselves. But if my body is telling me I am so sad and there is nothing here for me, there's no reason for me to get out of bed, I'm going to carry that with me. And so there is this mind-body connection, y'all, where yes, we can affirm things for ourselves, but we have to work on what's happening in our bodies. So this podcast will always begin with a practice. And I'd like to think that it will end with a practice. So begin with a practice, end with a practice. Begin with some words of affirmation, and I'm going to create a routine for us to drop into, y'all, because we need routines to drop into. And what I wanted to say about vicarious trauma is that, have y'all looked around the world lately? Because this is what really got me was when I was in the workshop talking about vicarious trauma. Have you looked around the world lately at all the pain, atrocities, and wounds? And this is where I really want this podcast to reach as many spiritual teachers, gurus, faith leaders, people who say that they are about love in this world. And I'm pissed some days at all the spiritual teachers. And I'm talking about there's so many of you right now. So many of you, right? Y'all are the love and light everywhere, right? Y'all telling people about all the ways to love more, to love themselves more. And you're silent in the face of so many atrocities. And I've appreciated Gabor Mate. I've appreciated Tara Brach. I've appreciated some of the spiritual teachers, and there was recently a whole panel too, where my own, one of my favorite spiritual teachers, Mushi Makeda, was there along with a panel, I think Fania Davis, and there were a bunch of folks on it. But I'm like, the spiritual teachers who check out of political things, that check out when there's a genocide happening, that check out because they're afraid that people will judge them, and maybe they're afraid of losing some of their fan base. And I call it a fan base because if they're students, you got to teach them something. If you're a spiritual teacher and you got students, you got people buying into your program and learning all about the stuff that you say is love and light in the world, and you see what people are saying is now 186,000 people being killed in Palestine through this genocide, and you're silent. I mean, not one post on your social media, like not one mention about this being the antithesis of what love and light looks like. If that's what you're doing, I feel like you need to pack it up now. And I mean that with all of the love in me. Because love is not anemic and passive. If you're about love and light, you can't check out of this. Love and light has a political component, okay? Love and light has a political component because we cannot say that we love only ourselves. This idea of interconnectedness and interbeingness is a real thing. From every teacher that I have studied, and I'm talking about Yeshua the Christ, some of y'all call him Jesus. I like to think about using people's real name. So Yeshua, who came through as the Christ for the Christian way of being, he was clear. Love your neighbor as yourself, right? There is no, your neighbor is LGBTQIA, is queer, so we can't love that neighbor. There are no like except for them in that statement. And Christ's walk, there is no separation anywhere, right? Christ was for the disinherited, as Howard Thurman says. So basically, and I'm not talking about Christian folks now. I'm just telling you that that's one teacher that said that. That's what the Buddha stood for. If y'all are students of Thich Nhat Hanh, that's all Thich Nhat Hanh was about, right? Interbeingness, interconnectedness, and that cannot look like silence in the face of genocide. I'm calling y'all in because I've seen too many of you now. A good friend of mine shared with me a couple spiritual teachers, maybe like couple months ago. We're together at a retreat. And she shared with me, and I'm not going to call y'all out, right? Because that's not the loving thing. We're talking about letters to humanity. So I'm writing you a letter, right? But like, y'all were there talking about love and light. And you were there clearly with a message to your fan base about the ways that they could be more love and light. And it was so interesting, right? Because like a tantric thing, and it was all about the power of tantra to do this and that. And there was a white-bodied person and a black-bodied person in the interview, and there was nothing said about our collective love, collective light. And listen to me, spiritual people. I'm going to tell y'all this now. That if you're just doing it on your own, it's not creating the ripple of love and light that we're talking about in this world. You know, there's a ripple of love and light, right? And it means that love has a responsibility. That you as a teacher of love and light, you have a responsibility to stand for love and light always. And I'm going to just name it here because I think it needs to be named. We've been duped. And when I say we, I mean most of y'all. And I mean that with love. Y'all have been duped to believe that money, that lobbies, that media who have been bought and paid for are the representation of truth, right? You have been taught and indoctrinated, and I say this with love because so many of us have been indoctrinated, and I'll do a whole episode about that one day. So many of us have been indoctrinated. Lord, help us for the indoctrinations we've received about who's the other, right? And it's gotten so bad that I can't tell the difference between the United States and Israel in certain ways now. And I have no judgment because I'm about love. So I want you to hear me. I have no judgment about Jewish people wanting to find a land that felt safe for them after enduring something as painful, as devastating as the Holocaust. I have no judgment about your need as Jewish people to find a place to live, to feel cared for, to feel safe. That's a human thing, a quest of humanity, that we want these spaces. My issue, and I think this is a real issue we need to tackle outside of, you know, the ways that you've been propagandized to believe. But like, my issue is that the Palestinian people were there when you arrived. My issue is that the British, who declared it so, who are the greatest colonizers in our history, who have departed from love and light in all the ways when they, you know, really doctrine of discovery, enslaved, the whole thing of that history. When they wrote that agreement without any consent or any thought of the Palestinian people, the people who are already there, and you just went along without saying, hey, I wonder, you know, how this impacts the people who are already here. And, you know, fast forward, right? The history of the Nakba and the, like, all the histories of occupation, right? Fast forward to this moment where everything is centered on the Israeli hostages, right? And not the 75 plus years of occupation and apartheid that cannot be loving, that have nothing to do with love and light. And because of the indoctrination of so many people and the ways white body supremacy shows up to be the standard, we are just asked to go ahead to just go ahead and say, okay, yeah, that's the way it is. And yeah, of course they have a right to this and that without any regard for the right of the Palestinian people. And that's what this is about for me. When I look at the genocide happening in that region, in that country, in that space, in Palestine, in Gaza, right? When I look at what the plans are and what has happened already of taking people from their homes, this is generations of stripping people from their homes to give settlers. But in this moment where you see the plan to remove people so you can build beachfront property, where is the humanity in that? Where is the moment of self-reflection that says, would I want this done to me? If this were me and my children and my mother and my father and my grandmother, would I want this done to me? And people, that's the call we're in now. Every step we take, the question is, would I want this done to me? Because I've seen footage of settlers walking into a Palestinian home and saying, pack up. This is our house now. And I know that tomorrow morning somebody showed up at my door in my house to say the same thing. I would not want that done to me. This is the conversation about humanity. And if you can strip away everything that you've been taught about the other, if you can strip away every single thing you've been taught about your right to oppress another person, and you can come to, would I want this done to me being the essential question, I think we could have another world. And that's what this podcast is about. Love letters to humanity, creating another world, because we need it. We need a world where everyone can be free. So I want to close with what I think is my guide to a podcast like this. There's so many people that I pull in. I pull in so many people before me. Dr. King, Malcolm X. And I know there could be discomfort when I say Malcolm X because so many people have spun him into something that he's not. But I love and regard Malcolm X as someone who saw the humanity in himself first as a Black man, and then all others. Bell Hooks, Audre Lorde, James Baldwin, Dr. James Cone, Katie Geneva Cannon, Howard Thurman. There's so many people who have inspired my work and this podcast. But the one person, the one idea, I should say, that I think is probably most important is Bell Hooks' idea about a love ethic. And Bell Hooks says, a love ethic presupposes that everyone has a right to be free, to live fully and well. Individuals who choose to love can and do alter our lives in ways that honor the primacy of a love ethic. We do this by choosing to work with individuals we admire and respect, by committing to give our all to relationships, by embracing a global vision wherein we see our lives and our fate as intimately connected to those of everyone else on the planet. She goes on to say, embracing a love ethic means that we utilize all the dimensions of love: care, commitment, trust, responsibility, respect, and knowledge. In our everyday lives, we can successfully do this only by cultivating awareness. So we have to be self-aware. How are we showing up? Are we showing up with care? Are we showing up with responsibility, respect, and with knowledge? Right? This is me saying that, inserting that. Bell Hooks goes on to say, being aware enables us to critically examine our actions, to see what is needed so that we can give care, be responsible, show respect, and indicate a willingness to learn. Now, I'll close Bell Hooks' quote with this: domination cannot exist in any social situation where a love ethic prevails. So this podcast, Love Letters to Humanity, is really truly guided by a love ethic. As often as I record, and I like to say I'm going to record on a weekly basis, I'm not clear. But as often as I record, I will record from that place of a love ethic. And I'll offer ideas, books, thoughts about how we can be more loving in every way, how we can actually create a world where we really acknowledge and see one another's full humanity, because the white body, I'm going to say this again, has no superiority. The white body has no claim on humanity. And we need to be reminded of that now more than ever, especially here in the United States, where you see so much that is antithetical to what I just said, shared. But we're here to humanize. We're here to love and to be about a love ethic. And so, yes, I'm also going to talk about the ways trauma shows up. I'm learning more and more about it in my own world, my work, my life, right? I'm learning about the way trauma shows up, but we're not going to focus on the trauma. We're going to focus on the healing. And so when we're focusing on the healing, we are going to bring in the folks that I've talked about in this, the authors that I've talked about before. So I've talked about Resmaa Menakem, and we're going to keep coming back to Resmaa. I talked about Natalie Gutierrez, and we're going to keep coming back to Natalie's work. I'm reading The Pain We Carry right now. We're going to come back to Prentice Hemphill, who is just transformative. Their healing justice work is just transformative. So we're going to come back and we're going to share that stuff in this space. And I hope that these teachers will see anything that I do as a homage, an honoring of their work. All right. And we're going to name the people whose work that we're calling on. And we're going to lift up the fact that, we can do this. We can create greater humanity. We have choices. Each and every one of us can get up and decide that we are going to humanize one another. And we're going to make it be that there's collective liberation, that each and every person gets to live into their highest possibility. That's what this is about. So I'm going to close with a practice that I actually heard Resmaa Menakem talk about. So I'm going to close with that. And what I'm also going to say as I close with that is that as a human, this spiritual being having a human experience, I've started many projects along the way, many podcasts, many things, and I referred to many of them earlier. But what I recognize is that I have a message. I have a singular message. And my message, I stand for our shared humanity, and our collective liberation. And that is my message. And that is what you're going to hear me talk about every single time I open my mouth. I'm going to keep the message consistent. I stand for our shared humanity and our collective liberation. And I learned that from Monica Sharma. I was a part of her Rapid Transformational Leadership Program earlier this year. And that meant, what do I stand for? Was so essential in that time. And everything that you see me produce, my film, my books, my podcast content, the classes I offer, the retreats I offer, because I'm going to offer all of those things, are going to come from that place. I stand for our shared humanity and our collective liberation. That is all I want for us. So, with that, I'm going to do a short practice that I heard Resmaa Menakem talk about. And I did this when I opened my workshop on trauma recently. And I thought it was so powerful. And so I'm going to adapt it. And it's going to be basically a moment of us looking straight ahead and breathing in and connecting to our breath. And then it's going to be another moment of us turning our entire bodies like to the right. I think this is my right. And then turning our entire bodies to the left. And I'm going to say that you could get up and do that. I'm going to stay seated. You can also stay seated. I know that we have many abilities. So we have, everything that I do, I want to come from a place of acknowledging disabilities, disabled people, people who have a variety of needs. And so I want to say you can do this seated, you can do this standing. So ultimately, what he was saying is that there's so many bodies of culture, in particular Black bodies, that are so used to having to watch their back. Does that make sense when I say that? I think that makes sense to us people, Black-bodied people, in our neighborhoods, the police, the white body supremacists. You know, we're constantly watching our back. And sometimes if we enter a space, especially as Black-bodied people, bodies of culture, and we turn and like we're present and we but we get present with ourselves. And then we turn and we also get present with ourselves again. We can remember that we're safe. We're okay. We're okay right where we are. And you know, he said something as well that I said in a different way during our workshop. That racism, the trauma from racism, the trauma from homophobia and transphobia, the trauma from all the elements of othering are not our fault. We didn't do anything wrong. He says we are not defective. Resmaa Menakem says that. I just, want to remind you as I close out, you have done nothing wrong. If you have been hurt by this world and all its isms and phobias, you have done nothing wrong. You are right, perfect, and complete, exactly how you are. And so we want to close, and I'm going to get off mic and do the practice as we close. We want to close with this embodied practice to remind yourself to be right where you are and to remember right where you are safe, secure, loved, and seen. And you can feel that in your body when you're feeling safe, secure, loved, and seen. So this has been Letters to Humanity, the podcast. And I'm just going to get my little microphone wire out of the way. I'm going to put my microphone down and I'm going to lead this practice. Thank you. Thank you for watching. I'll be back as soon as I can. I'm going to say that. Tell a friend about this. Share it. Like it. Come back to it. I know we can create a world where we really see our collective humanity and interbeingness. Thank you.